take two this morning on the Ben Garcia Show. Appreciate you guys making this part of your day. A lot of things going on. Last night, the Suns get a promising win. Is it a sign of things to come? I also had some conversations last night that I want to share with you guys. Given that being one, Kyler Murray, is he a Super Bowl caliber quarterback? And then also, there's a team that the Arizona Cardinals have a chance to really take advantage of. Let's jump into all of it. I'll see you guys in just a second.
The Ben Garcia Show. Yeah. Woo. Best show in the land. Yup. Listen. Come and get your information from Ben Garcia. Get the latest on your quarterback, running backs, and receivers. Tune in, so any other show you don't need them. Any news that he giving out, please just believe him. Giving out the latest prediction and top-notch analysis. Wanna hear the truth, better have thick skin like callus. The latest move that your team just made can be damaging. The dudes ain't speaking no facts, they just be rambling. Lights, camera, action, turn on the show, go get the cameraman. Yeah. Lights, camera, action, turn on the show, go get the cameraman. The Ben Garcia Show.
Listen, we all have issues sometimes. What's so frustrating about the technical difficulties that we have, which is why it's so important that over the past couple of days, we've gotten more and more people in the chat. For those of you that don't know, I can see what you guys are writing. Just oftentimes, it's hard for me to get my thoughts out. So of course, if there's super chats, I'll always read those, but it's kind of hard sometimes for me to be able to decipher what to go through and get through my takes. But, oh man, that's pretty funny. But hey, listen, it's 7 a.m. I've been up for over an hour now. Because I'm prepping, I'm making a show cultivated for you guys, the listeners. I'm here to entertain you. So, very funny. Audio didn't work this morning. I won't shy away from it. I'm a one-man band. Just as simple as not turning the location on correctly where the audio is supposed to come from. But either way, I appreciate you guys jumping back in. Michael, Ivan as well in the chat. Guys who have been everydayers, if I'm taking a saying from the Locked On Suns podcast. But either way, guys, just another reminder. Today will be the last day that we are going live at 7 a.m. We will start going Monday through Friday, 8 Eastern time, 6 a.m. local time. So reminder, you can always rewatch the stream on my YouTube channel, but just so you guys know, it will be switching to 6 a.m. starting next week. So set your calendars, grab a cup of coffee, and we'll get to it. Anyways, let's go ahead and start right into it. Thank you so much for making this a part of your day. Appreciate you guys being up so early with me, but it's been a success so far. This was really just a trial run on what this would look like, but it's been good. That is normally a way longer intro than we normally get into, but that's what happens when you have technical difficulties. You just have to talk around it. But either way, guys, appreciate you guys. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, tell a friend about the Ben Garcia Show. Follow me on all social media platforms at Ben Garcia Show. That's all social media platforms, Instagram, X, TikTok, whatever it is, at Ben Garcia Show. Would absolutely love to interact with you guys. And yeah, it's been great, as well as the support you guys are showing on this channel. I mean, I know I say it every day, but yesterday, another big jump in subscribers. We just keep climbing that good old corporate ladder, but let's get started here. I was at the Suns game last night, which is probably why my audio didn't work this morning for the first stream, but that's what life does. I was up late last night. I get up early this morning. I'm here to entertain the masses. Well, at least that's what I like to think I do. But I texted my co-host Brendan Clean at halftime. The Suns had given up 71 points at the half. And I texted my co-host and I basically said, I think this is it. In fact, I'll read you exactly what I said to my co-host, Brendan Clean, of the Locked On Suns podcast you guys can listen to every night, Monday through Friday, or every day, Monday through Friday. But basically, I had said, I've held off, but I think I'm ready to call it, man. They've played really well offensively, and they just stink. 72 in the first half to the Hawks. It was a little frustrating to me to see a team that had given up all these points, but still shot the ball efficiently in the first half. And then the Suns end up winning this game. And it's almost like they flipped the script. We've seen the Suns have pretty good first halves, come out in the second half and look horrendous. I mean, just horrendous. They get blown out. It doesn't look good. People are throwing fits. And I'd be right there with you with some of the issues that we've seen from this Suns team. But they came out and completely flipped the script. They win that game last night. And then you go and talk to yourself and you're like, is this what it's supposed to look like? Is this what it's supposed to look like? Yeah, you're going to give up a lot of points, but offensively, you're going to be so sound that you're going to be able to put teams away just by doing that. Defensively, can you get timely stops? And I saw a couple people call last night because it's kind of like a good movie, all you remember is the end. And effort was really good last night, which is a crazy thing to be talking about in mid-January. A team with Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, Bradley Beal, whoever it is. And we're talking about effort on this Phoenix Suns team. But last night was their closest we've seen to a full end-to-end game. That's even including their 9-1 start. We didn't see a full game where they were end-to-end dominant of another team. They've had issues putting away teams. That's why they have to play their guys 38 minutes a night, and that just isn't sustainable. You can't have that from this Suns team. But you saw last night what I thought this Suns team finally showed an identity of what it could be. Give up a lot of points offensively, but timely stops. And what I also think showed last night is this team has not given up yet. They're exactly 500 through the Suns season, and they haven't given up. Because it kind of felt like at this point, and this deserves a little bit of credit, that they could have thrown in the towel, demand Jimmy Butler show up, and then just figured it out from there. But at 17-19 on the season, 4 games back of the 4 seed roughly. It's not over. It's still salvageable. I have my issues or my lack thereof of Jimmy Butler showing up to this team. It feels like, now listen, I don't have sourcing. I'll never be a reporter. I have no interest in being Shams or Woj or some of the people who think they're Shams and Woj. But, per some of the conversations I had last night with other media members, the idea of getting Jimmy Butler still feels like a pipe dream. So that kind of led me to this. And that's the Suns don't have an identity, but this is what it can be. Outscore teams and get timely stops. And another thing from this game that I tried to explain to people that would work. I was on this before everyone. Brendan, my co-host from Locked On Phoenix Suns, was a part of the, was kind of acknowledged me as leading the charge for this. But I had basically said, Bradley Beal needs to go to the bench. And I said this last February. It's too much redundancy in the starting lineup. He doesn't fit what this team wants to do offensively. The ball stays stagnant. It doesn't move around as much. The passing is just better when he's not in the lineup. So don't confuse that with Bradley Beal taking a step back. It was interesting to me to see how many people last night were kind of in the consensus that Bradley Beal is not the same player. I think he's the exact same player. He was just in the wrong role, which is why you see him last night lead the Suns team in points with 25, even though he came off the bench. Because what Beal does now is just be the fiery offensive guy off the bench. Don't worry about getting assists. Don't worry about getting rebounds. Don't worry about being super efficient, because I would still rather you shooting the ball than Ryan Dunn if he played with the second unit, or a Oso Ighodaro who comes off the bench still. But last night did show some promise for the Suns team. I don't know if it can carry over. And one of the things that I kept on mentioning last night was, just call it what it is. I like that they won, of course, but I can't get excited about it until we see a string of games, consistency, cohesion, and some sort of chemistry. But the last point from last night was mainly this. I hadn't seen them act like a team or have those moments of connectivity until last night. Now, the first 10 games of the season pushed away to the side and just, put that there. Last night there were moments, 5 minutes in the fourth quarter where Kevin Durant blocked, I think it was a Kongwu, and you just kind of see the whole team firing up, the bench together, guys are slapping hands, kissing babies. We hadn't seen that all year. I questioned if they even liked each other. So being able to see that last night from the Suns team was promising. Maybe their most promising, not maybe, their most promising win over the past couple of months. Now they've got teams coming up, the Jazz on Saturday. The schedule still does begin to lighten up for this team. You got the Jazz, the Hornets, who just beat the Suns, the Hawks again in Atlanta, Wizards, Pistons, and then, of course, you play the Cavs for a scheduled loss on Monday the 20th, which, if I'm not mistaken, is probably a holiday since that game is at 1:30 p.m. But if the Suns can't get Jimmy, they still need a center, and those are probably all the assets you have to be able to allocate that to that position. So, interesting for me to see what the Suns did last night, because even if they won, you're not expecting hope. But they won last night, and it was pretty surprising because in that second half, they thoroughly outplayed them. And defensively, 20 points, 25 points, they didn't give up much in the second half, in the third and fourth quarters. So a promising win, yes. A sign of things to come, maybe, but not until there's some real cohesion and chemistry to this team. Otherwise, you just can't buy into them. All right. I want to talk about that being one Kyler Murray. I mentioned this in my pre-tease, the one where you guys couldn't hear me in the first stream. And I had said I had some conversations last night with other media members. And, I don't like to give out other people and their opinions. If they want to do that, that's on them. So you just have to trust me, which is okay if you don't. Take it for what it's worth. I talked to a couple of media members last night, and this is when the Suns were down in the game. And I just curious. I had some pretty prominent guys next to me. And I said, hey, what do you make of Kyler? And one of them said, well, you got to move on. You just got to move on. It's year 6. Largely, I don't know if I would say I'd move on this year, but I get where people are going with that. Kyler Murray, it's year 6. Next year, it'll be year 7. He's not getting any better. If anything, he regressed at the end of the season. That's a tough pill to swallow, but he regressed at the end of the season. So I decided at halftime, because these conversations took in the first half, let me just look at some of the quarterbacks in the NFL playoffs. And I think it was kind of eye-opening. So you have some of the quarterbacks that are playing this weekend. Justin Herbert, who's obviously a very good player. C.J. Stroud, Russell Wilson, Lamar Jackson, Bo Nix, Jordan Love, Jalen Hurts, Jaden Daniels, Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, Matthew Stafford. You take a look at some of these quarterbacks, and of course, you have your Patrick Mahomeses, and you have your Lamar Jacksons, and your Josh Allens. But there's also a C.J. Stroud who hasn't been great this year. There's also a Jordan Love who can be a little up and down, spotty at times. Bo Nix, a rookie. Jaden Daniels, a rookie. Baker Mayfield, who at times we still can't make a lot out of. Sam Darnold, who's had a revolution. And Jared Goff. There's only a few superstar quarterbacks in the NFL playoffs. And one of them can't win any games. Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, stars. Lamar Jackson, troubles in the playoffs. So that kind of begs the question, can Kyler win a Super Bowl? Well, Rex Grossman went to a Super Bowl. Brock Purdy, a couple of years, who we've started to see a little bit regress to the mean. He went to a Super Bowl. Jimmy Garoppolo went to a Super Bowl. So this idea that Kyler Murray isn't as good as some of those quarterbacks, Kyler's as good as Brock Purdy, at least talent-wise. If you stuck Kyler Murray on the San Francisco 49ers with all those weapons, you'd probably take the ceiling with Kyler Murray. And then you look around at some of these quarterbacks. Jalen Hurts a few years ago, very young, he went to a Super Bowl. I don't know if Kyler Murray can win a Super Bowl, but there is a lot of evidence to show he can get to a Super Bowl. And then at that point, who knows? A flag turns a game another direction. A team comes out kind of hobbled. You take advantage of them. You win that game. So what's the alternative to Kyler? Well, have you seen the Giants? Have you seen the Raiders? You really want to run it out there with Tommy DeVito and Aiden O'Connell? Listen, I have my gripes with Kyler. Consistency is way too up and down. In later games of the season, he has crumbled. And call it what it is. He has never showed up in the biggest moments, in the biggest games, when the team needs him the most. And those are all red flags. But to be fair, Kyler has never had what those other quarterbacks have had going into a Super Bowl. Brock Purdy had a stacked roster. Jimmy Garoppolo had a stacked roster. This offseason, you have the potential to really bolster up this team, and I believe you have to do that. Go get another wide receiver. Go pay T. Higgins if you want. You're not paying Jamar Chase. I'm sorry. Go get T. Higgins if you want. You're not paying Marvin Harrison Jr. Seems like overkill, but it also felt like overkill to have Debo, Brandon Ayuk, Kyle Juszczyk, Christian McCaffrey, George Kittle, Trent Williams. Go get T. Higgins. Go spend the money. Give him $30 million a year. Whatever. You're not paying Marvin Harrison Jr. And when it's time to pay Marvin, T. Higgins will be long gone. Load up this team. The only way you can get to a Super Bowl with Kyler is if you load up the offense. That means go get a guy like T. Higgins. That means bolster in the interior offensive line with guys like Trey Smith, the Chiefs' free agent guard. That's the plan for Kyler. Can he win a Super Bowl? I don't know. Can he get you to one? There are plenty evidence in history that yes, he can. That being one of Jimmy Garoppolo not too long ago and Brock Purdy just a year ago. So for anyone that wants to move off of Kyler, can I just ask you, what's your alternative? I guess you could bottom out, but who are you tanking for next year? I know how much you like Arch Manning, but he hasn't played a meaningful game in college football yet. And you want to draft him number 1 overall? We just have to be fair. Kyler Murray right now might not be the best choice if you were just picking out of all the quarterbacks in the NFL. But right now, he's your only choice. Because it's either him or Aiden O'Connell. It's either him or Tommy DeVito. And it doesn't matter what you think about those two quarterbacks. They'll never be Super Bowl appearing quarterbacks. That's just the issue. So, when I was talking to some people last night, again, prominent media members, and they said that, I was like, you can't move off of him. What would make you want to do that? And, there's this idea as well. I actually want to mention this. Sometimes I'll recognize the chat. It's kind of hard for me to do so while doing the show. But, Ivan in the chat was just talking about, tanking for Trevor Lawrence. Years ago, it was tank for Trevor, right? And I thought that was I think that's a really good point, Ivan. It was tank for Trevor Lawrence, and I was there too. Not with Kyler, but I thought Trevor Lawrence was going to be a generational talent. And he did play in big games. He won a national championship. And then what happened? In the NFL, he's been largely irrelevant. So it's hard to believe you're going to get better than Kyler, even in the short term. Unless some quarterback really pops out next year, which does happen, I don't know what you're doing. And also, to do the tanking, you actually have to do the tanking. You don't just get the number 1 overall pick because you forfeit your games. Look at the Raiders. They won like their last 3 games of the season or something ridiculous. The Giants won a meaningless game a couple of weeks ago, and it cost them Cam Ward, and it cost them Shedeur Sanders. Be careful about just pushing Kyler Murray out the door without having a succession plan. Be careful because we've seen very recently what you can do with guys who have the ceiling of Kyler Murray, which might not be the highest, but it is a ceiling. Brock Purdy, Super Bowl appearance. Jimmy Garoppolo, Super Bowl appearance. So maybe don't push Kyler out the door quite yet. Do what you can do this offseason. Build in the interior line. I really like Trey Smith from the Chiefs. Go get a T. Higgins. Spend the money. And then as well defensively, Hassan Reddick, Josh Sweat. Elevate that defense. 3rd year of Jonathan Gannon. It can be done. Now, I'm not saying it's likely, but it can be done. If I told you 3 years ago Jared Goff would be the number 1 seed in the NFC, you would have thought I was crazy. If I would have told you that Bo Nix 12 months ago was going to be in the playoffs, you'd think I was crazy. If I told you Jaden Daniels was going to take a Washington Commanders team that has been garbage for years to the playoffs in his first season, you would have thought I was crazy. Support Kyler Murray. Support Kyler. You can either be all in or all out. You can't be in the middle, which means you can't go this year and draft a quarterback in the 1st and 2nd rounds. Sure, in the later rounds, maybe. But this is the year to fully support Kyler offensively, defensively, in the interior line, and it shows you that quarterbacks, you don't need to be Josh Allen to get to a Super Bowl. Trent Dilfer did it. Brock Purdy did it. Rex Grossman did it. Jimmy Garoppolo did it. Jared Goff might do it this year. And does anyone really have belief in Jared Goff still? So, that's where I would land on that. Here's something as well that I think was kind of interesting. I know a couple of Raider fans, and sorry if it looks like I'm on my phone, because I am. I am scrolling back to a tweet from a couple of days ago. I know how the season ended for the Arizona Cardinals was frustrating, and I held them accountable. I went after this team, but it's a chance to have a moment of gratitude this morning when you look at a team like the Las Vegas Raiders. The Raiders fired Tom Telesco after just 1 season. Keep in mind, he drafted a starting center, he drafted a superstar tight end, and it was a fine draft. You know, I had one friend tell me, well, he failed in free agency. I'm like, okay. He went and signed Christian Wilkins, which probably the blessing of a guy like Antonio Pierce to do so. And Christian Wilkins got injured. What's the issue there? It's not Tom Telesco's fault. You know, it was a moment of gratitude to have with this team because I know how awful it ended towards the later parts of the season, but it could be worse. Your team could be the Raiders. What we've seen with the Cardinals is competency. At the bare minimum, competency, which I understand is not asking of much of your team, but the Cardinals for years never really had that. under Jonathan Gannon, under Monty Ossenfort, they're at least very competent. You know what the Raiders keep doing year in and year out? Firing coaches. Firing GMs. The next coach the Raiders have is they're going to be paying 4 coaches at one time. Unheard of. And here's what I get by that. Or here's what I'm getting to by that. Good teams use incompetent teams as farm systems. And that's what you have to do if you're the Cardinals. The Raiders are going to be going through another rebuild. They're basically just hitting the full reset button. They're going to do a bunch of interviews. They're going to have a GM, a new GM. And they're going to have to redo everything. And that leads me to this. And I talked about this a couple of days ago. It's very well documented. Max Crosby doesn't want to continue to lose. And he loves the Raiders, but it's been incompetency. It's been foolishness. The ownership has been bad. The next test for the Arizona Cardinals as a competent organization is to take advantage of the incompetent ones. Incompetent teams still have talent. Brock Bowers is there, and Max Crosby as well as there. You have to be able to take advantage of those teams. It is the duty of Monty Ossenfort and Jonathan Gannon to show off what they can do this offseason. Go get Max Crosby. Because you know what the Raiders are doing? Just like how I kind of talked about earlier with Kyler Murray. They're still looking for a quarterback. The Cardinals got their quarterback. You were going to use that pick on a pass rusher anyways. And you probably weren't bad enough to get a Jalen Walker from Georgia. And you probably weren't bad enough to get an Abdul Carter from Penn State. So you know what you can do? You sweet talk the Raiders, who would likely like to move up in the draft, for that being one Shedeur Sanders. A guy who's got a real affinity for some godforsaken reason with the Las Vegas Raiders. You send them your first round pick. You're not sending them 2 firsts. That's overkill. But a first, a second rounder, potentially a this year third rounder. So a first and a third this year, or a first and a second next year. That's what it could look like for this Cardinals team. That's the next step of competency for this front office, is taking advantage of the incompetent organizations. Carefully and strategically plucking out major talent like Max Crosby to this team. And if there's a chance that Max Crosby becomes available this offseason, just call it what it is. It would be a failure if the Cardinals didn't make that happen. This team needs pass rushing in the worst degree, in the worst way. I mean, if it wasn't manufacturing pressure artificially through blitz, through schemes, there's no talent on this defensive line. You add Max Crosby to that fold, maybe potentially throw a little bit of money at a Josh Sweat, a Hassan Reddick. With the defensive capabilities of Nick Rawlis and Jonathan Gannon, this team can be ultimately very scary. But it's what kind of shows you to be a little bit thankful, even if the Cardinals have largely been frustrating over the past couple of decades, especially over the last 10 years. Do you know if the Cardinals make the playoffs next year, it would still be a decade between their last win in the playoffs? Their last win was that Green Bay Packers win in the divisional round when the Cardinals were the 2 seed 10 years ago. First off, I cannot believe that was 10 years ago. But this team, as stated before, needs to support Kyler, needs to support Jonathan Gannon. It is a all-in or all-out season. If you don't make the playoffs next year, Jonathan Gannon's probably getting fired, because that means they likely regressed even more. Monty Ossenfort, you don't usually get a chance to survive the head coach too. He might just be gone by association. So it's not just about showing the world you're a competent team and taking advantage of the incompetent organizations. It's also about saving your job. Max Crosby looks to be available for the first time in ever, potentially, you know through back channels if the guy might be. You know what that might look like. You have to go do that. You have to go do that. Show Arizona Cardinals fans, the media, that although the end of the season was rough, you're still competent. And you can make those improvements. You can support your young quarterback in Kyler Murray. You can support your head coach in Jonathan Gannon, who I'm sure desperately would love a Max Crosby on this team. So that's where I stand on it. Few announcements really quickly, guys, before I end the stream this morning. I appreciate you guys for watching the show, especially with those technical difficulties. The real ones know what happened this morning. Just so you guys know, reminder, I will be in New Orleans from February 3rd through the 7th. Let me know what you guys might want to see behind the scenes. I'll be at Radio Row. I'll be doing some really cool stuff, meeting up some really cool people. I'll be there from February 3rd through the 7th. Appreciate you guys telling me what you guys might want to see. I'll still be streaming every day there. And also, reminder, next week we will, so this is the last day of the week, Monday through Friday, streaming in the morning, a show for you guys. But not to mention as well, next week it'll be 6 a.m. The show will begin at 6 a.m. local time, 8 a.m. Eastern time, Monday through Friday. Next week, circumstances have changed, but overall, it has been a very, very good week for the first week of streaming. So maybe I might hop on here if there's some breaking news, a Jimmy Butler trade, or something happens. But for the most part, the scheduled time the show will start from now on, 6 a.m. Eastern time, 6 a.m. local time, Arizona time, 6 a.m., 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So appreciate you guys making us a part of your day. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, tell a friend about the Ben Garcia Show. I will talk to you guys next week. Follow me on all social media platforms at Ben Garcia Show. I'm Benjamin Garcia. And before I go, until next time, it's been the Ben Garcia Show.